The very weird Spider-Man character called Rek-Rap is now one of the most important characters in the whole of Spider-Man comics, and here's why. So we know that Zeb Wells comics have not been received very well over the last year or so, with many arcs and stories that pale in comparison to Spider-Man comics from the 90s and early 2000s, and just Spider-Man media in general. However, in issue 36, I really do feel like this issue does capture some sort of tonality that I think the others are missing. I really do believe that Zeb Wells has started to embrace the silly nature of his comic run, and I know that might sound like a really bad backhanded compliment, but just hear me out. His earlier comics seeked out to be dark and devoted to giving us big character moments, just like many writers did before. However, a lot of moments fell flat on their face. So it was fair to say that his comics were really poorly received. Well, in this recent issue, I really feel like it embraced the very wacky nature of Zeb Wells' writing style. You guys know that I've tried to find positives in Zeb Wells comics for a very long time now, and yes, I've received a lot of criticism from doing so. However, despite the overall hatred for his run of Amazing Spider-Man comics, I still do believe there are positives to take from his run. For example, I do like the way that he wrote Peter and Felicia, etc. There are moments in these comics that I do think work really well, and I think Rek-Rap, and I know, forgive me for saying, is definitely one of them. I am genuinely convinced that Wells can write a very funny Spider-Man story. This comic takes Rek-Rap and makes him the center of attention, and it's actually quite a decent read. The only thing that really drags this comic down for me is that there's a lot of backlog of information that you really have to understand in order to know what's really going on in this story. But hey, that's been an issue in comics for like ever, so it doesn't really matter. But either way, this comic starts with Rek-Rap basically trying to convince this guy to let him rob him. And this guy's having none of it, but Rek-Rap just won't give up. But before we continue, if you are confused as to who Rek-Rap actually is, let me give you a little bit of background information. Basically, Rek-Rap is a demon from a place called Limbo, and Limbo is an alternate reality which exists between dimensions. That's the best way I can put it. Don't ask questions. It's the Marvel Universe. Essentially, Rek-Rap comes from there, and then he bonded with a symbiote from the 616 universe, which then took the form of a Spider-Man-like costume. This was because during Rek-Rap's introduction, he was actually saved by Spider-Man, and he then goes on to honor the superhero by basically taking a similar form to him in terms of his looks. I think it's quite cute. So essentially, Rek-Rap is a demon symbiote Spider-Man amalgamation, which sounds weird, but I guess it's kind of cool. We are then also reintroduced to Madeline Pryor, who is like the leader of this alternate dimension. And she is confronted by Luke Cage and Spider-Man. And basically, Cage and Peter are telling Madeline, look, Rek-Rap is kind of your problem, and he's kind of making a mess in New York. And Madeline is telling them to stop complaining. She's already got people on the case. So she erects a massive demon thing, and it basically goes looking after Rek-Rap. But then Spider-Man ends up helping him, and that's the whole issue. Yeah, I know. This issue inherently is goofy, and it centers around its one-liners and its comedic timing more than anything. And I think it proves why a character like Rek-Rap is actually so important for the Spider-Man comics while Zeb Wells is writing them. And I really feel like Wells stepped into this medium for a reason. Even though it could be purely coincidence that this style of storytelling fits his writing style better, I believe that if Wells is going to give us the next 30 issues of this book or so, this should be the style in which they are written. Now, obviously, that is not what any of us want long term. We want there to be dramatic, we want there to be fulfilling stories that have big character moments, like we got with Aunt May's death during Civil War, like we got with Kraven's Last Hunt, like we got with the marriage of Peter and MJ. I could go on with many big moments from these comics. However, I do feel like if we are going to get many more Zeb Wells written Spider-Man comics, that I don't think we should get what we've been getting previously, because like I mentioned, he doesn't really know how to handle some of these characters to the best of their ability. So why not play into his strengths? Why not write comedic, light-hearted, funny, and even sometimes silly Spider-Man comics? Because they're an easier read, and I guarantee you the audience would much prefer that than to ruin some of the characters that have already been previously established. And also with Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Spider-Man coming up, if you want a serious and potentially darker storyline, you are more than likely going to find it there. This style of storytelling also means that he doesn't have to concentrate on giving characters a lot of depth. A big example of Zeb Wells not really knowing how to explore a character's depth properly was actually Paul. Now, everyone hates Paul in these comics, and rightly so, but I don't think Zeb Wells went in with the intention of anyone actually hating Paul as much as they do. Because let's be honest, if you're going to write a character that's going to be such an important stake in Peter Parker's and Mary Jane's lives, two of the most important characters in all of Marvel Comics, then you're going to at least give him some reasoning or some backstory or some depth of some kind. However, Paul got none of this, and this is a reason as to why he is a bad character. We don't know what type of person he is, we don't know what hobbies he likes, all we know is that he stole MJ from Peter, and that's about it. Oh, and by the way, that Rabin fella, yeah, he's his dad. And like I said at the start, I know this could sound like a very big backhanded compliment, but I feel like this really does work for Zeb Wells' writing style. And I know that Rek-Rap is actually going to be staying around for a few issues, so I really do hope that this style of writing can actually carry over to the other issues as well. And I'm not as reluctant as I once was to give this a go, because I know what Zeb Wells can do if he writes the stuff that he's good at. And also, we're going to get Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Spider-Man, so that craving for a dark and depressing storyline from Spider-Man is already going to be covered. So, Zeb Wells, just knock yourself out. Either way, as I said, I still don't think it's good enough, and hopefully it doesn't last forever, but at this moment in time, it's important to do so. We need good, amazing Spider-Man comics. Haven't had them in a long time. But with that being said, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.